What would you do if the money in your wallet suddenly meant nothing? Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the cash you saved for years can't even buy a loaf of bread. It sounds impossible until it happens. We like to believe our currencies are stable, that dollars and euros will always hold value. But history tells a different story. From Germany after World War I to Zimbabwe and Venezuela in modern times, nations have watched their money crumble into paper and dust. Hyperinflation isn't just about rising prices. It's about the moment people stop believing that their money means anything. When that trust disappears, economies collapse, and everyday life becomes chaos. Savings vanish. Wages lose value before they're even paid. The rich flee with their assets while ordinary families struggle to buy food. And the scariest part? It all happens much faster than anyone expects. The pattern is always the same. Governments drowning in debt print more and more money to cover their losses, hoping to buy time. But each new bill they print only deepens the hole, until the currency itself becomes worthless. In this episode, we'll explore how hyperinflation unfolds, the warning signs most people miss, and the lessons history keeps trying to teach us. Lessons we can't afford to ignore. Because when money loses its meaning, everything else starts to fall apart. After World War I, Germany was a nation broken. Its cities in ruins, its people exhausted, and its economy suffocating under the weight of the Treaty of Versailles. The world demanded reparations Germany simply couldn't afford. So the government reached for what seemed like the easiest solution. They started printing more money. At first, it appeared to work. Wages were paid, debts were managed, and life went on. But underneath, the system was rotting. The more money that poured into circulation, the less it was worth. By 1923, Germany's currency, the mark, was collapsing. Prices doubled in days, then hours. A loaf of bread in Berlin cost billions. People hauled stacks of banknotes in wheelbarrows, and lifelong savings vanished overnight. Money had lost its anchor. It was no longer tied to gold, production, or anything real. It was paper, and everyone knew it. Trust in the currency disintegrated, and with it, the foundation of the economy itself. Those who survived weren't the ones with the most cash. They were the ones with tangible assets, land, gold, property, or goods people still valued. The rest were left holding paper that no one wanted. Germany's tragedy left a clear message written across history. When a nation prints money without real value behind it, collapse isn't a possibility. It's a guarantee. But humanity didn't learn the lesson. Fast forward to the early 2000s, Zimbabwe. Once one of Africa's most promising economies, it began to crumble under political unrest and failed land reforms. The government tried to spend its way out of crisis the same way Germany once did, by printing more money. By 2007, prices in Zimbabwe weren't just rising. They were exploding. Inflation hit an almost unimaginable 231 million%. A loaf of bread that cost $1 today would cost $2 tomorrow and $10 by the end of the week. People carried bags of money just to buy a few groceries. Eventually, the Zimbabwean dollar became meaningless. Shops stopped accepting it. People traded goods, bartered, or turned to foreign currencies just to survive. Hyperinflation doesn't just destroy economies, it destroys trust. It unravels the invisible agreement between a people and their government. That money represents real value. When that trust is broken, society itself begins to fall apart. In the end, Zimbabwe's government gave up on its own currency. The Zimbabwean dollar was abandoned, and people began trading in US dollars and South African rand just to survive. But for millions of ordinary citizens, it was already too late. Lifetimes of savings were wiped out. Pensions disappeared. Wages meant nothing. And yet the story was about more than money. It was about trust. Zimbabwe's collapse revealed a painful truth. Hyperinflation and political chaos often walk hand in hand. When leaders lose control of both the economy and their people's confidence, disaster isn't far behind. We saw it in Germany a century earlier, and again in Zimbabwe. Different continents, same mistake. governments drowning in debt, papering over the cracks by printing more money. And when that illusion finally breaks, it's the poor and middle class who pay the price. Those with land, gold, or foreign currency often manage to survive, or even profit, while everyone else watches their lives fall apart. Then came Venezuela. In the early 2000s, it was one of the richest countries in Latin America, blessed with massive oil reserves and a booming export economy. But years of corruption, reckless spending, and falling oil prices pushed the country to the brink. Instead of fixing the underlying problems, the government turned to the same old playbook: print more money. By 2018, inflation had reached 1 million%. Imagine watching prices double before you could even cash your paycheck. Supermarket shelves emptied, medicine vanished, and families fled the country in search of food and stability. The Venezuelan bolivar became worthless. People stopped using it altogether. A shadow economy emerged, trading in US dollars, gold, and even digital currencies. And once again, the poor suffered the most. Those with nothing but paper money lost everything. The lesson from Venezuela is brutal but clear. Hyperinflation doesn't just destroy currency. It destroys the structure of society itself. Businesses collapse, jobs disappear, and trust, the invisible glue that holds an economy together, completely dissolves. When a nation's money dies, what follows isn't just financial ruin. It's a breakdown of everyday life. When a nation's currency collapses, the damage isn't just economic. It's deeply human. Savings disappear. Wages stop meaning anything. Supermarkets run empty. And soon after, anger fills the streets. In places like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, hyperinflation didn't just wreck the numbers on a spreadsheet. It tore families apart. Food riots, protests, and mass migration followed. People who had spent their whole lives building stability suddenly found themselves starting over from nothing, often in a new country. So what can we actually learn from these painful stories? The first lesson: diversify what you own. Throughout history, the people who survived economic chaos weren't the ones holding piles of paper money. They were the ones holding real value. In Weimar Germany, it was gold. In Zimbabwe, it was land or foreign currency. Today, that could also mean things like commodities, real estate, or even digital assets that aren't tied to a single government's printing press. The second lesson: trust what's tangible. When a country starts printing money faster than it can produce goods, the writing is already on the wall. Cash loses meaning, but assets that have real-world use, homes, metals, energy, tend to hold their ground. And finally, remember, hyperinflation isn't just a story from the past. With global debt climbing, political instability rising, and central banks pumping more money into fragile economies, the same forces that destroyed Germany, Zimbabwe, and Venezuela are quietly at play today. It may not happen overnight. It rarely does. But history shows how quickly stability can vanish when trust in money fades. The past isn't just something to study. It's a warning label. If we ignore it, we risk living through it again. So, the real question isn't if another wave of hyperinflation could come. It's whether we'll be ready when it does. If this story opened your eyes to how fragile our financial systems really are, make sure to subscribe for more lessons from history. Because sometimes the best way to prepare for the future is to understand the past.